And of course, this is an exciting moment because we have a brand new fragrance from Initio Parfums Privé, and this is called Lift Me Up. Now, I originally heard about this fragrance a few months ago, and I tried it a few months ago. The folks at Initio were kind enough to kind of give me the proverbial sneak peek or sneak sniff, as it were. And of course, this is an exclusive to Neiman Marcus. If you take a look at the box, it says Initio X Neiman Marcus. So this is a collaboration. It will become a worldwide exclusive down the line, but I think as per September 1st, you can actually find this in stores in Neiman Marcus. I know some other people have already sampled it, but this is the newness. I know Initio has so many perfumes that I'm absolutely in love with. We're talking about Blessed Baraka, we're talking about Side Effect, we're talking about Paragon, which is this beautiful plum, Palo Santo, ambery, resinous fragrance. Of course, Musk Therapy became a fan favorite among so many people, and it seems like the Initio brand is not slowing down anytime soon. Of course, we also have Rehab, which is also one of my favorites, and I think one of the easiest fragrances to recommend because of its mass appeal, super high compliment factor. Well, today we're talking about Lift Me Up, and of course, with a name like Lift Me Up, this is going to be a fragrance that will become conducive of putting you into a positive mood. It's going to elevate your spirits. It's going to lift you up, as the name implies. And this is magnolia, ylang-ylang, a hint of bergamot in the opening. You have tonka bean, vanilla. You have this amber accord in the dry down. So it's warm. It has a bit of a floral presence, but it's still quite clean in the heart. You have a bit of this citrusy effervescence happening in the opening. So there's a lot happening in here. And of course, I think the assumption, because of the preponderance of the florals in the heart, is some people might be left to ask, is this going to be a feminine leaning composition? I think there's a lot of questions, right? So I'm going to try to address and tackle as many of those as possible throughout the course of this review. But before I dive into the video fully, I do want to mention that if you're a fan of perfume related content, and of course, if you love smelling your best, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and give this video a thumbs up. If you take anything of value from today's episode, it would really, really mean a lot to me. And of course, Initio Lift Me Up is a fragrance that I had been eagerly anticipating for quite a while now. Of course, I am a fan of so many Initio fragrances, as I mentioned, but there's something about the perfumes that come in this collection. They're all very smooth, they're very soft, except for Paragon. Paragon was pretty gregarious. It's very out there, very confident, darker, denser. It definitely has that plum Palo Santo resinous thing happening in there, as I mentioned before. With Lift Me Up, this is going to be a bit musky. The vanilla is very smooth and sultry. The tonka bean is also very effortlessly conveyed in the base, securing a bit of sweetness in this fragrance, but then you also have that floral tonality that I think for some people might be a tad feminine leaning, but not exclusively feminine, right? So if I had to put a number on it, I would say it's like 60% feminine, 40% masculine. All Initio Parfums fragrances are unisex. I know something like High Frequency, the women absolutely love that fragrance. Atomic Rose, the women absolutely love that fragrance. They have fallen in love with it. But here we're talking about the brand new Lift Me Up. And of course, it goes without saying, I am so happy to have this one in my collection. And I will say this one is going to be a hit. The first thing that I'm smelling from this fragrance, and I made a comment on this when I had initially tried it a few months back. I was there with a good friend of mine, and a few people actually explored it at once in this setting that I was in. And I personally get this creamy, lactonic, milky presence in the fragrance. And I suppose it's the vanilla, or perhaps there's some other lactonic ingredients in there. But it comes across actually smelling quite milky, very smooth, very elegant. It's a tad flirty, perhaps a bit feminine leaning, but it has like this rich gourmand property that you almost want to sink your teeth into. And it's amazing because I don't think the brand, and by the way, I don't think it's classified as a gourmand, but I'm saying it has gourmand properties, right? So it's not a full-blown gourmand. It's not sugar and caramel and cotton candy and marshmallow and this and that. No. It's not going to be a full-blown gourmand, but there are some gourmand tendencies that I think really come through in this fragrance. And that milky attribute is done so beautifully. And of course, milk is a trending note in perfumes nowadays. Of course, you have fragrances like Bianco Latte by Giardini di Toscana. You have Blanche Bête by Liquide Imaginaire. Her Confession by Lataffa. Sogno in Rosso by Valentino. You have Cream Velvet by Hadlaj. You have so many milk-based perfumes. And I'm not saying this is a milk-based perfume, but it does have a lactonic character about it that is hard to miss. Now, let me take a moment to just kind of spotlight the floral nuances that are happening in the heart. It comes across smelling rather clean, rather serene. It's very diaphanous. It's very transparent. It has this very calm and subdued nature about it. Of course, some flowers are immediately noticeable. I mean, think of Atomic Rose, right? Like the rose in there is just so forward in that fragrance. And it also goes without saying, there's a couple different varieties of rose in that fragrance, which is why it's so noticeable. But the flowers in here, whether we're talking about the magnolia, the ylang ylang, whatever the case may be, it comes across smelling rather clean. So there's this clean, almost quiet, subdued demeanor about it, not to suggest that it's muted, not to suggest that it's not loud, because the performance on this is phenomenal. This is an extrait de parfum, so you can expect 8+ hours longevity. I don't know if it's going to be the beast mode performer that something like Side Effect is going to be. The rum, the spice, the booze, the tonka bean, that saffron lingering in the dry down. That is a beast mode performer. Paragon is also a beast mode performer. What I think we're seeing here is that there's a nice balance achieved between the longevity, but also the projection, because this one is actually going to be quite diffusive. Now, that tiny bit of citrus that you're going to get in the opening is really going to open up the fragrance. And I think it's in alignment with the name of this perfume, Lift Me Up. So it opens up in this very bright and luminous capacity, which I think is very beautiful. But you give this fragrance a chance to settle down. You're going to get that clean white floral heart. There's nothing rough or sharp or abrasive about it. And a lot of floral ingredients can come across rather sharp and heady, especially the yellow florals like freesia or narcissus. And of course, we have some other flowers like osmanthus that can be very, I don't know if polarizing is the word to use, but they're going to be contingent on one's personal taste. I think the magnolia in here is done so beautifully, and it does, in full disclosure, convey a beautiful sense of femininity. I think this is one of those DNAs where if you try it, if you're a fan of perfumes like Valaya by Parfum de Marly, Blue Talisman by Ex Nihilo, Afnan Tarathi Electric, Blanche Bête by Liquide Imaginaire, those clean, fluffy, slightly lactonic, floral, and slightly sweet perfumes, you're going to get something that kind of falls underneath that same category, but at the same time, this fragrance is going to do it in its own way. And I love, 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 love how beautifully diffusive this fragrance is. I think from Initio, there's a benchmark of quality that has already been established prior to many, many years, right? So if we're talking Initio, we're talking, fragrances that are very strong and bold and charismatic. And of course, they had their leather-based offerings. They had some darker fragrances. And of course, they have, some animalic offerings as well, number 1, number 7, number 8. So they have a lot of really interesting fragrances within their olfactory catalog. And then this is one that has some of the biggest mass appeal that I've encountered in an Initio fragrance to date. When I tell you this is such a beautiful, milky, floral, slightly sweet offering, it is done so beautifully well. Now, there's a nice balance between the vanilla and the tonka. So it's hard to say that one supersedes the other because it really doesn't. I think you have a really nice balance of the two. It's not so much vanilla that it's a full-blown gourmand, and it's not so much tonka bean that it just smells like straight up coumarin and that it gives off this mass-marketed appeal. We've seen that a lot of perfumes, both on the men's and the women's side of things, men's fragrances, women's fragrances, have utilized, and I would say overutilized tonka bean as a base note. And I think as a consequence, what we've seen is that a lot of them are kind of lumped together, and there's a lot of comparisons being made among them. Thank goodness this one does stand out, and it does do things in its own way. So I think if you're a fan of those notes, if you've explored those notes in other fragrances before, Magnolia, any number of Hermès fragrances, especially in the Un Jardin collection, have utilized Magnolia. Vanilla is such a prominent note in so many perfumes nowadays, but the vanilla used in here is rather rich. There's a complexity to it. A lot of perfumes will use ethyl vanillin, which is basically 70% of the molecular structure of actual vanilla. So it comes across rather oversimplified, and that's not what's happening here. Like, there's a density to it, there's a weight to it. And so I personally love the development of this perfume. It opens up very bright and luminous. The florals are very clean, transparent, but not super quiet. And then that undercurrent of vanilla and tonka coming together with a slight hint of amber just gives it this body, this weight that I think will secure the long-lasting attributes of the fragrance that will push 10 hours longevity. And again, if you want longevity in an Initio fragrance, I don't think anything is going to top Side Effect, Atomic Rose, Paragon. There are so many incredible fragrances from the brand that will give you impeccable longevity. But of course, with Lift Me Up, we're talking about something that strikes a balance between being elegant, confident, magnetic, sensual, flirty, effortless, but also fun, right? This is one of the most versatile fragrances that Initio has ever put out. And I think that is a very strong statement, and that's not one that I would apply to every Initio fragrance. And I'm being honest with you. I think there's a lot from the brand, especially the ones in the Carnal collection. Some of them are very occasion specific, but there's just something done so beautifully about Lift Me Up that it immediately transforms your mood and your aura. And the number one piece of advice that I would suggest to anyone looking to purchase or get their hands on a bottle of this fragrance is, do your due diligence, walk into a Neiman Marcus, and sample this fragrance. But even more so, spray it on skin. Give it a full wearing if the sales associate permits you to. I know I can be pretty heavy-handed on the atomizer when I do apply fragrances, but please try it for yourself. See how it resonates with your personal taste. See how it meshes with your skin chemistry, your pH levels, so on and so forth, because what works for one person may not necessarily work for the next person. But I will say this. This is the most effortless, the easiest to wear Initio fragrance, in my opinion. Musk Therapy, I thought was beautiful, and I still find it to be a beautiful composition, but it's also one that is dependent on my mood, right? So some days I'm in the mood to wear it, especially spring and summer. It just radiates so beautifully off the skin, and it has such an iconic smell to it, it can't be replicated. And then, of course, we also have some other fragrances that are very daring, very provocative, that I personally love to wear. In the colder weather, Initio has some dark ambery offerings. They have some coffee-based fragrances. They have some that are very brooding. They have a vetiver-based offering as well. But here we have something that is floral, it's sweet, it's milky, it's a bit citrusy up on top. And ultimately, I'm just very, very excited for people to get their nose on it. But as is the case with every single other fragrance on this planet of ours, try it for yourself. Scent is subjective, so I can't be the end-all be-all in terms of you making that determination as to whether or not this fragrance is going to be for you. But again, if you have any familiarity with the other fragrances that I discussed, if you like some of the more lactonic offerings on the market, if you like fragrances that are cleanly floral, they have a hint of sweetness in them with that bright luminous opening, I think Lift Me Up is going to be a solid fragrance for you to add to your collection. So I just foresee, and I am speculating right here, right now, that this is going to become a massively popular fragrance within the Initio catalog, because other fragrances that resemble this even remotely have gone on to do incredibly well. So from a forecasting standpoint, I think Initio put out something that is incredibly solid. And, you know, hats off to the brand. They're always putting out something really, really interesting. And I'm so excited for all of the incredible things that they're going to do in the very near future. And I suspect that they're not going to slow down anytime soon. I think this brand has been putting out one fragrance after another. And prior to this one, with their previous release, I attended the launch party in the city and also one that they had in Miami. And I just love how immersive they make these experiences. And, you know, hopefully they set up a boutique or something in the future so that people can go ahead and sample these in person. But for the time being, Neiman Marcus is the place to go. Listen, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching my review of Lift Me Up by Initio Parfums. Once again, if you took anything of value from today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting the channel by clicking subscribe, hitting the bell, and giving this video a thumbs up for the algorithm. It would really, really mean a lot to me. So thanks again for watching. I love you all, and we'll see you tomorrow with a new episode. Bye.